Welcome to Bishop's Online Tutoring. This is sheet number 3 covering reading scales. Okay, write down the number marked with an arrow. So we can see that we've got 40 over here, 50 over here. We've got a bunch of different indicators and then one in the middle, which is clearly a little bit longer than the others. So we can imagine that this point right here is going to be halfway between 40 and 50, so that must be 45. Now let's look at how many indicators we have between 40 and 45. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So clearly we can label that as 41, 42, 43, 44. So each indicator represents 1 and it is going up by 1. So when we get to 45 over here, the next one down is going to be 46. Write down the number marked with an arrow. Well, we can see that we've got the middle point right over here. So that has to be 3.5. And in between, we can see that there's 4 indicators, so each one has to represent 1. So 3.1, 3.2, 3.3, 3.4. So this has to be 3.4. Find the number 430 on the number line. Mark it with an arrow. Well, here's 400, here's 500. Here's the middle point, so that has to be 450. So it's between this range over here that 430 will lie. We can call this 410, 420, 430, and 440. We're looking for 430, so that will be this one, i.e. this marker right here. The question does ask us to mark it with an arrow, so let's go ahead and do that. Find the number 3.7 on the number line. Mark it with an arrow. Here's 3, here's 4, here's the midpoint, so that has to be 3.5. And we're looking for 3.7. We've got 4 indicators between 3 and 3.5, so clearly each indicator represents 1, so 0.1 in this sense. We can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so clearly each interval represents 0.1. So to get to 3.7, we would get to 3.5 and go 3.6, 3.7, so it'll be this one right here. But let's mark it with an arrow. Write down the number marked with an arrow. So we've got 500 here, 600 over here. We've got a midpoint. The midpoint has to be halfway between 500 and 600, so that would be 550. So let's just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each interval represents 10. That means from here, 1, 2, 3, 30, 550 plus 30 is 580. So it'll be 580 that it shows. Write down the number marked with an arrow. Well, we've got 7 over here, 8 over here, and here's our midpoint, so this is 7.5. Each interval represents 0.1, so 7.1, 7.2. Find the number 48 on the number line. Well, we've got 40 over here and 50 over here. This has to be the midpoint, so that'll be 45. Each interval represents 1, so let's just count up 1 from 45 up until we get to 48. So we'll need to go 3 spaces, 1, 2, 3. This right here, this is going to be 48, but remember to draw an arrow underneath if that is what the question is specifying, which in this case it clearly does. Find the number 6.7 on the number line. So here we have 6, here we have 7, here we have the midpoint, which is 6.5. Each interval clearly marks 0.1. So let's count up 2 from 6.5. So 1, 2. Mark that with an arrow, and we're good to go. Write down the number marked by the arrow. So we have got 20 here, 30 over here. This bit right here represents the midpoint between 20 and 30, so that has to be 25. Let's just count up from 20. 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. So the arrow is pointing to 27. Write down the number marked by the arrow. Okay, we've got 3, we've got 4, we've got the midpoint, which must be 3.5. Let's count up from 3 and see where the arrow is pointing to. So 3, 3.1, 3.2. Find the number 460 on the number line, mark it with an arrow. So we've got 400 here, 500 here. Now notice this time, we don't have as many intervals between the two big numbers. So let's count how many we have. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's see if it's going up in 20s. So 420, 440, 460, 480, and the next one would be 500. So it is going up in 20s. So let's mark 460 with an arrow. Find the number 2.8 on the number line, mark it with an arrow. So here we have 2, here we've got 3. The middle point is going to be 2.5. So let's count up from 2.5. 2.6, 2.7, 2.8. So this point right here will be 2.8. Write down the temperature shown on the thermometer. Well, we've got 0 over here, 5 over here, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 intervals. So I can only imagine that it's going up in 1 degree Celsius. So from 0, that's 1, 2, 3. So the thermometer is showing 3 degrees Celsius. The temperature falls by 8 degrees Celsius. Work out the new temperature. Well, let's first draw a number line because that's going to be the easiest way to work this out. We'll put 3 on one end. So we start over here and we go backwards by 8 degrees. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the answer is going to be minus 5 degrees. Write down the number marked by the arrow. So you've got 70 on one side, 80 on one side. We can see that the arrow is pointing quite perfectly in between 70 and 80. So it must be 75, the midpoint between 70 and 80. Find the number 530 on the number line, mark it with an arrow. So we've got 500 over here, 600 over here. We've got the middle point over here, so that has to be 550. So let's count up from 500. So 510, 520, 530. So this point right here is going to be 530. Put these numbers in order of size. Start with the smallest. 31 is our smallest number, 52 is our next smallest number, 180 is the next smallest, and 1007 is the biggest number we have. Write down the number marked with an arrow. So 500 is here, 600 is here. This is our midpoint over here, which will be 550. So clearly it is going up in tens. So let's count up from 550. So 560, 570, 580. So the arrow is pointing to 580. Find the number 6.7 on the number line, mark it with an arrow. 6 is over here, 7 is over here. Our middle point is over here at 6.5. So we can see this is also going up in 0.1s. So let's count up from 6.5. So 6.6, 6.7. Draw the arrow, and that's the end of that. We can ignore this. This shouldn't be here. Write down the reading shown on the scale. Well, we've got 3 over here, 4 over here. This line is longer, so that's going to be our midpoint. So that'll be 3.5. Now, this is clearly going up in 0.1s. So let's count up from 3.5. 3.6, 3.7, 3.8. Change 5.7 kg to grams. Well, to go from kg to grams, all you have to do is multiply by 1,000. So we would multiply 5.7 by 1,000, and we would get 5,700. Write down the time shown on the clock. Well, the shorter hand is pointing towards 5, and the longer hand is pointing towards 10. So it would be 4:50. A lot of people would write this down as 5:50, but remember this. If it was 5:50, so almost 6 o'clock, the shorter hand, so the hour hand, would be pointing closer towards 6. And finally, write down the reading shown by the arrow. So we've got 20 on one side, 30 on the other side. There's only one interval between the two numbers, so that has to be the midpoint. So that would be 25. Okay, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you got something very valuable out of this video. I would recommend check out some of the other videos that we have on our channel. We are going through the entire syllabus for GCSE Maths, topics 1 all the way out to 120.